It's always a pleasure to have our buddy on here, Dave McCormick, who is running for the Republican nomination for the Senate in the great state of Pennsylvania, my home state, running against basically a do-nothing, know-nothing placeholder who ran on his father's name, Casey, which is a famous name in Pennsylvania. And Dave McCormick, you were recently in Israel. You wrote a fantastic piece in the Wall Street Journal. Why don't you discuss with us what you saw and how Biden and Blinken are now really putting pressure on Israel to surrender?
Yeah, hey, Mark, thanks for having me. This trip to Israel was incredibly emotional, but really instructive. I flew over there. We just had 36 hours on the ground, and I went to the kibbutz Kfar Aza, which was one of the places where there was 100 people brutally murdered, 600 meters from the Gaza border. It just you words can't describe it. The bullet holes, the blood, the absolute barbarism. I met with hostage families and talked about their kids who are stuck in some Gazan dungeon and they don't know if they're ever going to come home. I met with a young woman who was wounded, left for dead under a pile of dead bodies by the terrorists, and then ultimately discovered. And then finally, I watched a 47-minute film that's taken from the body cams of the terrorists that were killed that shows acts of barbarism, Mark, burning of families, killing of parents in front of their children, raping and dragging women through the streets, beheadings, killing babies. I mean, it's unthinkable.
That is all on the video, right?
On the video.
Are those that's got to be seared in your mind. I don't know how you get it out of your head.
You can't unsee it, and you can't watch this thing and not feel an absolute solidarity to the people of Israel. You can't watch this thing anything other than the eradication of Hamas. You can't watch this thing and not want to support Israel in that pursuit. And the final thing I'll say, Mark, is this isn't just about Israel and Hamas. This is about a fight between good and evil. This is about a fight against Islamic jihadism and the proxy wars that the Iranians are prosecuting in the Red Sea and Syria and Iraq with Hezbollah. They're coming at the West, and so it's in our interest to support Israel. They're the point of the spear, but this is bigger than just Israel. This is about a fight against a terrorist ideology that threatens us all.
And yet, Israel is under pressure from this administration and the Democrat Party and their malcontents in the street to surrender, to basically give up victory. And this administration has been funding Iran, it's been funding the PLO, it's been funding Hamas through UNRWA. It is buddies with Qatar, which has protected the leadership of Hamas, which has also spread money around like a mob organization. This administration has actually expanded the war in the Middle East by not standing up to the Houthis and especially the Iranians who are attacking American military personnel. You were in the military and served in combat and so forth. What do you make of all this?
Well, first, the original sin. The original sin is Iran. This is President Obama, with the support of Bob Casey, put in place the Iran deal that essentially gave Iran limitless resources, over $100 billion, which it has used to fund these proxy wars, to fund Islamic jihadism throughout the Middle East and the world. Joe Biden's continued that policy. Bob Casey has been a rubber stamp every step along the way. And so that's where the problem started. And now, when Israel is in a time of need, we see a growing chorus on the Democratic Party side, Bernie Sanders and others, calling for a ceasefire. And just to ask yourself, Mark, could you live in some ongoing state with the people that just butchered your family living 600 meters across the border? There's no way you can move forward without eradicating Hamas. And I'll say one final word. I watch these same images. I mean, of Gazan people, innocent children and women that are being affected and killed by the war. And I'll say two things on that. First, I went to an actual Israeli unit, a secret unit that I can't discuss in detail. I actually watched them targeting. I watched the protocols. There's an enormous amount of effort undertaken by the Israeli military to make sure they're only killing terrorists and not killing innocents. Second thing I'd say is, in this case, when innocents are killed, it's the fault of Hamas. Hamas has integrated themselves with the civilian population. They've blocked humanitarian assistance to the population, and they've blocked the innocents from escaping. And so, to the extent that civilians are being hurt, innocents are being hurt, which is the main reason opposition is growing, that's the fault of Hamas. And yet there's no accountability. There's moral equivalence on the part of the Democrats in saying that Israel's somehow at fault for defending itself against a genocidal terrorist group.
It is amazing what you see going on in our streets, is it not? And has Joe Biden given a national address talking about the rise in anti-Semitism? Has the Department of Justice and Department of Education done enough to confront this? What do you think?
Absolutely not. But, just referring back to some of the things you've written, I think what's happened here is that the bankruptcy of this progressive ideology, the bankruptcy of an ideology based on this notion of the oppressed versus the oppressors, is coming into the light for all of us to see. When you see those college presidents sitting there themselves into a pretzel to try to defend behavior that's clearly anti-Semitic, clearly inciting violence. When you see this behavior of trying to defend the indefensible, that is because this ideology is bankrupt. And I think that we're seeing that now more clearly than we've ever seen it before. And that's why I honestly believe that the Democratic Party is in such deep trouble, because you're seeing this fragmentation of this extreme ideology that most Americans can't imagine they want to be part of. And that's I think that's what's happening in Pennsylvania. That's why I keep calling out my opponent to call balls and strikes on President Liz McGill, to call balls and strikes on taking down the statue of William Penn, to call balls and strikes on the anti-Semitism of Summer Lee. This is a moment where the Democratic Party and all of us are being tested, and many, including Bob Casey, are failing that moral test.
I'd like to hold you over. I have a couple more questions on this. Like William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania, they want to take his statue down. And Fetterman has been saying more in criticizing Hamas and this administration than Bob Casey. I haven't even heard Bob Casey. And maybe he's speaking out, but he's certainly not speaking out in a way in which he wants to be heard. For with Senate candidate, great state of Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick. First of all, Dave, there was a movement, apparently it's been stopped, to try and remove a monument to William Penn. I don't think people outside of Pennsylvania realize Pennsylvania is not a radical left-wing state. It is a state with multiple types of constituencies, but in its heart, it's a pro-American patriotic state, correct?
No doubt about it. And this is a perfect example of the crazy ideology of the left, but also the weakness of Bob Casey. So there was a plan put forward by the National Park Service to take down the statue of William Penn. In the park, but William Penn, of course, the founder of Pennsylvania, the park where William Penn's home was, it's called Welcome Park, based on the ship that William Penn landed in when he landed in Philadelphia. And so this is the kind of crazy thing. William Penn was a Quaker and was a classic liberal, and the idea of getting rid of him because they wanted to make it more inclusive was crazy. I think Josh Shapiro called the White House and saved President Biden from himself. But once again, Bob Casey said nothing on this. And this is the kind of weak leadership that he's had in the face of crazy left-wing progressive ideology and anti-Semitism. And that's why I'm running against him. He's been rubber stamp for Joe Biden. 98% of the time, he's voted for Joe Biden. And in a state that, as you know, Mark, is your home state, it's arguably the most consequential state in the country. Fifth largest economy, where the country was born, and a battleground state for the presidency. Bob Casey in that consequential state has been an incredibly inconsequential senator.
You know, he's running his father's name long enough, and I don't know what the hell he's done in the Senate. Whatever he's done, you're right. He just votes with it. He's got to be the laziest senator, certainly among them, don't you think? I mean, what does he do actually?
You know, I think he keeps his head down. And, you know, this is a time where 80% of Pennsylvanians and 80% of Americans think the country's headed in the wrong direction. And so what I say on the campaign trail, listen, if you want the status quo, if you think the country's headed in the wrong direction, if you like where Joe Biden's taking things, you shouldn't vote for me. Vote for Bob Casey. But if you want a Pennsylvania success story, somebody's going to shake things up, somebody who's going to fight for the people of Pennsylvania, somebody who doesn't owe anything to anybody other than the people of Pennsylvania, that's the contrast. And Mark, we're in trouble as a country. You know this better than anybody. You've written about it. You speak about it. We need leadership who's going to fight to get America back on track. And Bob Casey is the exact opposite of that.
Now, you know why I like Dave McCormick. You can hear him, ladies and gentlemen. He's fantastic. He's really got the ability to win that seat. And if people want to help you, where do they go, Dave?
Dave McCormick, PA.com. And listen, this race is critical for Pennsylvania. It's critical for the country. This race will help flip the Senate and make sure that we have strong conservatives taking our country in the right direction. And this seat and this race will also, I think, have a lot to do with helping our Republican nominee win the presidency. So I appreciate all the support of your listeners, and it's DaveMcCormickPA.com.
Well, you're a favorite here, and we really appreciate you, and we want to have you back. So we'll keep doing that. Thank you very, very much, and thank you for conveying what you saw over there.
Yes, sir. God bless. Thank you.
All right. God bless you, my friend. He's a good man.